Our presenter today is Darel Preble. He's founder and executive director of the Space Solar Power Institute, an organization in the public interest to identify and continue development of space solar power tools and technologies. He's also formerly a member of the board of directors for the National Space Society. Today, he's going to discuss space solar power and California's dying power grid. So I'll turn it over to him and let him get started. Thank you.
Welcome to this session on space power and California's dying grid. I have another brief appointment that I want to share with you. We have to attend and host a short briefing on the moon for the mining and refining section down there, which is the LATimes, one of the areas of probably great interest for mining and development, since it's already halfway to settlement. Unfortunately, the dust monitoring has not been working in the mining group, so we haven't been able to do the monitoring that's been necessary. But I heard this morning that Dr. Eli has fixed his Welch-Allen otoscope, and he has figured out a way to work around the battery assemblies that were provided as replacements, which Amazon shipped and didn't work. So we rigged this $2 fix, which I'm going to show you, on aluminum file that we mined and printed yesterday. So now he can easily maintain the batteries. Dr. Eli sent us some little pictures to show you what he did to help out our people exercise their imaginations. So you can now attend your scheduled dust monitoring checkups. We thank Dr. Eli MacGyver. He had a broken battery assembly and batteries, so he has replaced the battery assembly with a new connection, which replaces the hard wires which formerly were there. He's putting in the aluminum foil crumpled up, which we mined and printed here. It now works, so you can get your dust monitoring done, which is critical. We want to monitor and keep up as part of the research going on for dust equipment. So let's go back into finishing up this morning briefing. We have to remember that stuff breaks up here a lot, and we've got to make it work one way or another, but there's no Granger up here. We want to keep up our production. This is one of the activities that we've been doing at the Space Power Workshop we sponsor, and continuing to refine our understanding of our rectennas and how you assemble them, how do you maintain them, how do you connect them. First question a lot of people may ask you, if you're not familiar with space power, is why do you want to build it? The first reason these days is because of its low CO2 intensity. It produces, of course, no CO2 if you're using the sun. It also has zero fuel cost, which is a considerable improvement on paying for your gasoline. It uses no water, which is a big issue these days as we try to get away from fossil fuels, which are considerable. The point of these screens, of course, is the nutritional impact of rising CO2. The details and histories. And there are a lot of presentations which cover much of this ground, because most of these issues are being researched and continue to unfold as they better understand the damage rising CO2 is doing. which has been a part of my presentation for about the last 10 years. Those are stored in my Google Drive, which is available. If you go to the WSI conference, you'll see the workshop we have out there. There's one of 8 workshops at WSI, which contain my Google Drive presentation, as well as about half of them are not mine. There are other conferences presentations relating to space power. So if you wanted to build space power, then the cost is daunting, as I say, because the physics of efficiently moving power from high orbit down to a rectangle depends on the size of your rectangle. Nominally, it's going to have to be around 4 miles across. Your antenna transmitting down phased array in space would nominally be around 1 kilometer or so across. To build such structures and finance them, to do the developmental R&D to get these built is a huge undertaking, which means you need to have a sunset act, we call it. Fortunately, we've been through this route before, back in 1962, when ComSat Corporation was legislated and created, which is now, communication satellites, of course, are about a $350 billion a year industry. A power satellite industry, which could be created by a Sunset Corporation or act, would be far greater size. It would also, incidentally, for the lunar development, provide financing and a way to pay for the much lower costs of launch, due to the fact that you'd have a far larger market for launch, which would pay its way. There is no other avenue to pay for a vastly larger launch market. The communication satellite industry is about tapped out as far as expanding the launch industry. They're launching satellites now, small sets, by the 50s and 100s. This is an article about ComSat Corporation, which I'll point to some of the financial returns from ComSat, which back in 1977, 1978, saw their revenues, that is, return on their investment, rise from 16 million to 184 million in 1 year. ComSat has been bought by Lockheed Martin back about 20 years ago, but it was never a monopoly. It was just a way to initiate an industry that needed to be commercial. And that's the road that they took. And it was followed before, of course, in the Transcontinental Railroad and Telegraph Act in 1862. Turning to California, and really a lot of the impetus now toward fixing rising CO2 and climate change, California has taken on. If you look at this chart, you'll notice that California by far leads the nation and many countries in the world with their implementation of solar and wind. Unfortunately, this also this shows that they had in-state generation of 21% wind and solar, or 22 of the total power generation. Globally, the situation is very different. Our Director of Energy Economics, Gail Tverberg, just actually yesterday posted the latest data from BP's Statistical Review of World Energy. Globally, solar is only 1.1% of our total energy. Wind is only 2.2% of our total energy. Hydro, which is pretty much built out and is not going to be significantly improved, is at 6.4%. All these are what they call renewable sources. But only solar and wind are actually can be built out. Hydro depends on unique geological structures, of course, and you have a limited amount of rain. So we've actually made basically no progress. We've been going backwards as far as CO2 in the last 20 years, although we've invested trillions into renewable energy projects like wind and space power, and of course global CO2 continues to increase at escalating rates. I talk about closing nuclear plants, closing coal plants, more windmills, terrestrial solar, but the existing hot air in Washington is not doing a thing except spending money. California was crowned the blackout queen by Eaton, which is a large industrial concern who measures these things. They've led blackout rate for the last 10 years. This is from their website. A big problem in California is as they greatly increase the number of windmills and ground solar, the aging power lines tend to get overloaded. And it tends to melt the linkages, which can't easily be economically maintained for grids which are adding large amounts of pseudo-random intermittent power, which is windmills and terrestrial solar. It melts the connectors. This is because of the explosion in transmission spending, which is, of course, impacting California power bills. Looking forward, simply because a reliable site such as, I don't know, such as nuclear, probably is the most highest capacity factor, is about 92%, that uses the grid. Their transmission grid is 92% utilized. Transmission from large wind areas or solar is much less utilized. So the per megawatt hour is greatly higher. So they've been shutting off power in large areas of California because of high winds and that PG&E, of course, just went through their second bankruptcy. This may happen again when the winds pick up again, and they have cut power repeatedly to hundreds of thousands of customers. They have the largest number of policies and incentives for building windmills and terrestrial solar. But FERC has told them in bankruptcy litigation that they can exit a lot of these contracts, which the windmill and terrestrial solar owners are not happy about. But the bankruptcy judge has determined that the RPS plans are simply not within the financing effects that PG&E can handle going forward. So further blackouts are being discussed and trying to, this is some of the pictures from California. So they are the poster child, if you will say, for where the existing Green Deals have been taking us. Probably the leading professor in pushing these has been Stanford professor Mark Jacobson, who argued before the National Academy of Sciences in his review that the United States could achieve 100% renewable energy with wind, solar, and hydro. in review by another group of experts led by Christopher Clack, they determined that Jacobson's work has significant shortcomings in analysis. At that point, Jacobson sued the National Academy of Science and Christopher Clack, claiming that this was not true, which went to the DC Superior Court, which determined that Jacobson's lawsuit was against the public interest because free expression under the Second Amendment or First Amendment must be allowed, especially for technical discussions. So they threw the lawsuit out. The LATimes called this a ridiculous lawsuit. I'd be embarrassed if I were Professor Jacobson. But anyway, you can find all this. I'm not going to go through all of this. I'll give you a summary of what happened. He was claiming that you could just simply add more turbines to dams. Adding more turbines to a dam doesn't increase the amount of water behind the dam or increase the total megawatt hours available. It means you can simply go through it more rapidly. But you're not increasing the amount of renewable energy actually available. I testified 5 years ago for the EPA that effective control of rising CO2 is not financially feasible for even large electric power generation companies using currently available technology and RPS constraints. These companies and customers are not capable of shouldering heavy, substantive, and procedural burdens, their wording, as their visceral connection to the global economy prohibits deploying grossly non-economic and reliability-reducing power generation technology. Space solar power is required to effectively address rising CO2. You may be interested in how I got started in doing this. In 1994 and 1995, I was working for Southern Company, which was a very large electric power company. 97, I quit the strategic planning group at Southern Company to start the space solar power organization and workshop down at Georgia Tech. And there's still a couple of workshops on websites which need to be updated. But reliability is one of the biggest problems with the pseudo-random intermittent windmills and terrestrial solar. We can go through all these, but I want to open this up probably for questions. Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, if feel free to post your questions in chat or unmute and ask Darel Preble directly your questions. Go right ahead, folks.
If you would like to unmute, you're welcome to talk. I'm going to try to look at the chat, which I don't see the chat on here right now.
There should be a little icon at the bottom.
I found it.
Yeah, okay. All right.
We're all in learning. Now I found it. This is differently when you're on speaking.
Is there a location, Darel, where online where your presentation is, where your slides are at? Do you have a slide deck online that perhaps?
I have many slide decks online.
Okay.
They're mostly connected in my Google Drive, which I can send to anyone who will send me a note through the Space Solar Power Workshop, or Darel Preble at Comcast.net, or on my LinkedIn, it goes to Darel Preble at yahoo.org. Wizzy.
Darel, could you just put that email address in the chat?
I'm going to go back to my first screen because that contains my, I'll just tell you what it is. It's darel.preble at comcast.net or info@solarsat.org. I also have a LinkedIn ID. You can see another different link email there.
Okay.
I'm glad that the Lunar Society, Moon Society undertook this. It's a big undertaking to try to get one of these conferences virtually well administered. So I hope that they continue to try to do this.
All right. Well, I've shared your email addresses and also your LinkedIn in the group chat. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, should they just indicate that they have made contact with you from the conference here, and then would that be good? All right. All right. Great. Well, unfortunately I apologize for the technical issues we had earlier, but yeah, we have to. I guess that's it. Thank you, Darel. Yeah, thank you for giving your talk today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.